The Jordan Show on YouTube.
Hey everyone. You know, it's funny how video calls have basically taken over our lives, right?
Oh yeah, totally.
I mean, think about it. Work meetings, catching up with friends, even doctor's appointments are all happening on video these days. It's like we all became our own little TV studios overnight.
That's a good way to put it.
But you know, something I've been thinking about lately is the environmental impact of all this video streaming. Like, we all know our devices use energy, but have you ever wondered about the actual carbon footprint of, let's say, a typical Zoom call?
It's not something that most people think about on a day-to-day basis, but it's a really fascinating topic.
Totally. So today we're doing a deep dive into what we like to call the hidden cost of video calls. We've got some research here that breaks it down and compares video calls to good old-fashioned audio calls, digs into why video uses up so much data, and gives us some practical tips for how we can all lessen our impact.
It's more relevant than ever, that's for sure.
It really is. And get this, the research says video calls can actually emit like 4 to 6 times more CO2 than just an audio call.
Wow.
And that's just for a 1-hour meeting with just 7 people. Pretty wild, right?
It is surprising when you first hear it, but I think when you start to think about what's actually happening behind the scenes, it makes a bit more sense.
Okay, so break it down for me.
So basically, video streaming requires way more data transmission than audio. Because you're not just sending sound, you're sending high-definition images and sound. And it's happening constantly, multiple times per second for every single person on that call.
That's a good point. It's not just my laptop working hard. It's like this whole network of systems.
You got it. All that data is getting processed not just on your device, but across a huge infrastructure of networks and data centers.
Data centers.
Yeah, data centers. Basically, they're these huge warehouses full of servers that store and process all this information. So every time you turn on your camera, you're basically firing up a tiny part of a giant data center somewhere in the world.
Wow. So is there any one part of a video call that's like particularly energy hungry?
Well, video compression plays a big role. It's like squeezing a large file into a smaller package so it can be transmitted quickly. But the algorithms that make that compression happen are super complex, and they use up a lot of processing power.
And processing power equals energy, right?
Exactly. More processing means more energy use. And that's where a lot of the CO2 emissions come from.
I see. So the source we've been looking at, it actually gave some specific numbers on data usage, and it's kind of mind-blowing. Video calls can use something like 3 to 5 megabytes per minute per person, whereas audio only uses a tiny fraction of that.
Yeah, those numbers are pretty startling. It really puts things into perspective when you see how much more data video uses compared to audio. And that difference in data usage has a huge ripple effect. More data means more energy is needed to transmit it and process it, which leads to a higher potential for those CO2 emissions.
Right, it all goes back to the energy. And we can't forget that the source of that energy matters too, right?
Absolutely. It's not just how much energy, but where that energy is coming from. Some data centers are powered by renewable sources like solar or wind. Those have a much lower carbon footprint. But a lot of them still rely on fossil fuels.
So if a data center is running on coal or oil, then our video calls are contributing to those emissions.
Exactly. The research actually gives this example of a 7-person meeting to show how quickly the impact can multiply.
Right. So just think about those big team meetings or webinars with dozens of people. It's kind of scary to think about the cumulative impact of all those video streams, you know?
Yeah, definitely. It makes you think twice about hitting that video on button.
For sure. But okay, so let's get practical here. We know video calls have this bigger environmental impact, but I don't think anyone's suggesting that we just abandon them completely.
Oh, no, not at all. There are tons of simple things we can all do to reduce our impact.
Give me some tips.
Well, the biggest one is just switching to audio only whenever possible. You know, if you don't need to see someone's face, just turn off the camera.
Easy enough.
And even if you do need video, like for a presentation or something, just turn off your camera when you're not actively speaking.
That makes total sense. Anything else?
Oh, yeah. Lowering the video quality can also help. And if you're on a laptop, make sure it's plugged in. Running on battery actually uses more energy overall.
It's interesting how those little things can make a difference, huh?
It's like anything else when it comes to sustainability. One person making a small change might not feel like much, but when lots of people start making an effort, the collective impact really adds up.
So true. Well, I think this has been a really eye-opening deep dive. We've learned about how things like video compression, and the energy sources of data centers all contribute to the carbon footprint of our video calls. But we've also talked about some practical ways to reduce our impact, which is awesome.
And maybe the biggest takeaway is just that awareness is key. Just taking a moment to think about whether video is really necessary before you hop on that call. Maybe you can achieve the same goal with audio and lessen your impact at the same time.
It's all about making those informed choices. We hope this conversation has given everyone some food for thought. And hey, if you have any other tips for living a more sustainable digital life, we'd love to hear them.
Definitely. Share them with us.